My husband and I both have somewhat difficult mothers. Honestly, my mother-in-law's a nightmare, and I don't see why anyone would want to be around her. But my husband was clear from the beginning that he would never lower contact with her, and we would let the kids make their own decisions. I have two kids, Jack and Daisy. Jack has always been attached to mother-in-law. I went into this thinking my kids would totally hate her, and my husband would see my point, but Jack was always drawn to her. Daisy, on the other hand, doesn't like mother-in-law. She finds her personality as grating as I do, and likes my mom. My parents are amazing and love kids, but for some reason, Jack never connected to them. He finds them too over the top and annoying. So around 6 or 7, we chose to respect the kids' autonomy and not make them visit the grandparent they didn't like. For what it's worth, my parents didn't know how to handle Jack and found him extremely difficult, and I don't think mother-in-law liked Daisy much. It worked out well for everyone, and since both of the kids got to be the favorite somewhere, there was no jealousy. They still saw the other grandparent at big family events, and Daisy never warmed to mother-in-law. She also said behind her back that she didn't like her, which I would not be surprised if Jack repeated. My family is middle class, but mother-in-law is very well off. I put a limit on what she could buy Jack to make it fair, but when he turned 18, I obviously couldn't control that anymore. She bought him a fancy car, paid for his school, and all of his expenses. We did have money saved, which we gave to him, but he could not afford the school he goes to. Jack doesn't have to work while he goes to school, and mother-in-law's husband said he will hook him up with a job when he graduates. Daisy, on the other hand, had to decide between a school we could afford or her dream school and loans. She chose the state school, and she does work part-time. She's become very resentful of her brother. She's been demanding my husband cut ties with his mother for the favoritism, to which he pointed out that she had a favored grandparent. Daisy claims mother-in-law owes her the money because they are both her grandchildren, and she's been lashing out at Jack. She accused mother-in-law of being S the other day for only paying for the male grandchild. Mother-in-law replied that Daisy is S because she rolls her eyes when mother-in-law speaks. That isn't S, you are insufferable and no one likes you. I told Daisy that I'm not having this conversation again. She didn't want a relationship with her grandmother, and mother-in-law owes her nothing. I'm sick of how she is treating her brother, and she needs to stop counting mother-in-law's money. I said it is absolutely off the table, and Daisy thinks that I'm being unfair and controlling. My parents think I was too harsh. Everyone sucks here. You and your husband did your kids a disservice by not continuing to even attempt to foster relationships with all of their grandparents. Yes, children should have a degree of autonomy to decide who they want to be around, but 6 to 7 years old is hardly the age to make well-reasoned decisions that will impact the rest of your life. Allowing the kids to play favorites was always going to lead to issues. Have you considered that Daisy's dislike of your mother-in-law was heavily influenced by your obvious dislike of her? Because it very likely was. That said, mother-in-law is epically crappy to so blatantly display her favoritism. Daisy is justified in being pissed, but she is not in lashing out at her brother or making demands, because mother-in-law can do what she wants with her money, and Daisy isn't entitled to any of it. You're the a-hole for years ago allowing a rich grandparent to openly only like one child, and your husband is the ultimate a-hole for not realizing his mother is most likely in fact very S. This isn't going to go away, and it's a problem you as the parent created by not wanting an actual parent. You basically let her be around your son, knowing she's not a good person, just because she has money. Is your husband staying around for a paycheck in the end? This all sounds like a daughter who will go non-contact once she can. All bad all around, and all could have been prevented years ago. Everyone sucks here. The way I see it, and I'll probably be in the minority here, is that you both created this situation from the beginning, and now you have no one else to blame but yourselves. You catered to your children, allowing them to be disrespectful and to have favorites, and in turn, the grandparents had their favorites too. You raised your son and daughter to believe that they don't have to be respectful, and they don't have to get along with someone they don't like, even if it is family. Now that they've grown, jealousy has reared its ugly head, and you wonder why that is. Your daughter can't help feeling jealous, but she can stop acting entitled. You even said that you always supported her in hating mother-in-law. You brought this all on yourselves. Basically, my daughter, 20s, divorced her husband, 30s. They have a 3-year-old boy together who's the joy of our small family, as he is our first grandson. They divorced last year, and we found out earlier this year that it was because he was cheating on her since their son was born, but our daughter never provided a reason why. I thought there might be more to the story, so I called him and we talked for a bit. I ended up finding out that my daughter had dealt with depression from her pregnancy that we had no idea about, and it took a toll on him. Before anyone gets mad at me for understanding his side, please know that he apparently tried to go to therapy with her multiple times, and she rejected it. It's also not like he never tried to fix things. He still is very active in their child's life and co-parent. My daughter has seemed happy, so I assumed they were civil. A few weeks ago, he called me and told me that he did not have any money to pay his rent this month. He used to live with my daughter, but moved out when they separated. And it was because he was hoping to pay for a significant amount of his child's expenses. He is unemployed and has been sending most of his money to my daughter for their child. I felt really bad and decided to give him some money to pay his rent from my private account. We're pretty well off, and I thought it would be cruel to let him become homeless when I could help him. Especially since my daughter has a good job. I thought it was rude of her to ask for money for their child, knowing he could not afford it. It wasn't like she would become broke if he did not give her the money for a few months. Then my daughter found out, and became extremely upset with me. Accused me of siding with her ex-husband over her, saying that I never cared that he cheated, which is not true. She thinks that because I am still friendly with her ex, just because I am nice to him, does not mean I'm okay with him cheating on her at all. I told her she should not want the father of her kid to become homeless. That was cruel and petty, and she basically just hung up on me, and has not talked to me since then, which was a few weeks ago. My wife and I have argued over this as well. She completely agrees with my daughter, and has called me ignorant. She thinks that I should have talked to my daughter before I gave him the money, and that I am basically approving of her ex-husband's lifestyle and choices, which is absolutely not true. My only reason for giving him money was because he is the father of our grandson. She also said he should be paying for half, since he is half the reason he exists. I understand what she means, but the fact is, he cannot afford to pay for his son right now, and my daughter can. Asking money from him is like kicking a man while he is already down. I think I did the right thing, but it is pretty hard to reassure myself of that when everyone else is mad at me. So am I the a-hole here or not? You're the a-hole. Your daughter was suffering from PPD, and your ex-son-in-law decided it was a great time to go have an affair. Additionally, it doesn't matter if he is unemployed or living in a cardboard box. His financial responsibility to his child doesn't end. It's nice that you believe that your daughter deserved to be cheated on, and should also have to pay for their child 100% on her own, while her husband uses the bank of ex-father-in-law and refuses to get a job. Have you given your daughter money? Asked her if she needs anything? Emotionally supported her at all? You're the a-hole. I thought it was rude of her to ask for money for their child, knowing he could not afford it. Wow. Interesting how you brush off his cheating, and then say your daughter is rude for expecting child support from the father of her child. Cheating is never acceptable. Just divorce someone if they make you unhappy. I can't even weigh in on the rest at this point. You're the a-hole. He cheated. He is unemployed. Why do you chastise your daughter when he got himself into this situation? You're enabling bad behavior and alienating your own flesh and blood in the process. I wouldn't speak to you either. If he's that broke, why doesn't he get a job? I, 18 female, am heading off to college in a couple months at my dream school. I'm very excited about it, but there have been some difficulties. It is a very expensive school out of state, and I did not get any scholarships. I've lived with my mom and stepdad for the last 6 years after my parents divorced. My older brothers decided to live with my dad after the divorce because they were already in high school and didn't want to leave their friends. My parents divorced because my mom had an affair with my now stepdad. She has always been very open about it and knows it was wrong, but I've always been much closer to my mom than my dad, so that's why I decided to live with her. My dad tried to keep a relationship with me during the first couple years after the divorce, but it always seemed forced and awkward to me, and eventually I just stopped wanting to visit him. He will still call and send me letters and gifts for birthdays and holidays, but I don't really put much effort into keeping up with him because I don't feel close to him. My dad always told me that he had money put aside for college for me, and now that I'm going to be attending an expensive school, that money is really going to help. I called him to ask him how it was going to work with him giving me that money, and he gave me a couple options. He said he could transfer smaller amounts into my account every month, or give me the lump sum all at once. He said it was up to me. I told him I wanted the lump sum, and he agreed and transferred all of it into my account. I was excited and happy because it was a lot of money, more than I expected. I told my mom about it, and instead of being happy for me, she was pissed. She said that was less than half of what my dad gave my older brothers. She told me she knew exactly how much my dad had saved for my brothers because they were still together when my brothers were preparing for college. That got me pissed off too, because I felt my dad was playing favorites, and if there was extra money that he had saved for me, I could really use that money too. So I called him and started yelling at him for giving me less money than my brothers. He apologized and told me that was all he could afford to give me. He said he has fallen on some hard times over the last couple years, and that I would know that if I had ever bothered to take interest in him. He said he saved all he could afford for me, and felt bad it wasn't the same amount as my brother's, but that was all he could do, and told me he would try to save more and give it to me in smaller amounts. I told him to not even bother, and that this was the kind of thing that made me not want to have a relationship with him. I told him he was a selfish a-hole, and that I was glad I decided to live with Mom instead of him. I later got calls and texts from my brothers, telling me I was way out of line, and that my dad did the best he could for me, even though it was clear I want nothing to do with him. You're the a-hole. He gave you a very generous college fund, that's the most he could save. If falling on harder times and being unable to save you as much as he did your brothers is the kind of reason you don't want a relationship with him, I'm very excited to hear what your mother has saved for you in terms of a college fund. Seriously, you all but cut your dad off. He still provides you the most college money he can, and you get pissy because you wanted more? Wow, you got pissed that your dad might have been playing favorites with your brothers, even though you clearly played favorites when you chose your mother. You're the a-hole, and an entitled brat, totally. And ask that favored mother of yours how much she saved for your college, instead of blaming your dad who you chose to keep away. Holy duckaroni, you're the a-hole. You haven't had a real relationship with your father for years, and were initially really surprised and happy at the amount of money he gave you. You do not live with him, nor do you put an effort into your relationship. You get no right to decide how much or how little effort he puts back into you. Yes, he may have given your brothers more, but he's experiencing financial hardships right now, and still considered you enough of a priority to save up some money for you. I, 35 female, have a 19-year-old daughter. For the past 5 years, I've been dating my current boyfriend. We have a 4-year-old son together, and I moved into his house after our son was born. He's pretty fiscally successful, and I don't work. I admit I haven't always been a good steward of money, and he's been burned in the past by people overspending his money, so we agreed that I'd have a set amount I could spend on myself. He pretty much knows what I spend the money on, but doesn't usually say anything unless I'm spending too fast, or if I end up buying pretty stupid. However, one point of contention between us is in regards to my daughter. When we moved in, he helped my daughter enroll in a local Christian boarding school with a good arts program, which my daughter wanted. However, she dropped out at the start of senior year when she said the teachers were mean and the work was too hard. My boyfriend said this disappointed him beyond what could be expressed in words. He barely spoke 2 words to her after she moved back into the house, and my daughter moved out when she was 18 with her now fiancé. She's now pregnant, despite the fact that both her and her fiancé, 21 male, have no steady employment. Her fiancé works part-time at a fast food joint, and she cleans houses. She called me the other day and said she wanted to go to urgent care because she was experiencing ringing in her ears, but that they were at least $150 short to pay for a potential trip there. She said this was a one-time ask and she'll pay me back, but she said she couldn't give me a definite date of exactly when. I tried to in the past bring up the possibility of my boyfriend giving my daughter another chance, but he shut the conversation down. I know that if I Venmo'd my daughter the money, my boyfriend had a 90% chance of flipping out and saying that was not what he wanted his money spent on. I asked my daughter if this was a one-time medical visit, if she or her fiancé couldn't just go to the local Advance America and get a payday loan. My daughter started complaining that the store seemed like a shady place and she didn't want the interest. I told her she had to accept interest because my boyfriend would agree that she was a risky borrower, and this was his money, so I couldn't antagonize him by using it in ways that would probably dismay him. I told her to look at the payday loan because I couldn't help her. Am I the a-hole? You're the a-hole. You're pretty duck and judgy about your daughter's life circumstances for someone who is a teen mom who admits to a lifetime of being irresponsible with money. While you don't really owe your daughter anything as she's an adult, abandoning her to play house with a new family is pretty ducked up. You're the a-hole. You're 35 with a 19-year-old daughter and had a kid with a person you'd only been dating a year prior. You said your boyfriend didn't speak to your daughter much after she moved back home, before turning 18, after dropping out of Christian boarding school he got her into. And you're fine with a grown man acting so childish towards your daughter. You admit you don't work and have been bad with money in the past, and now rely entirely on him. And now, when your daughter needs medical attention, you won't help her because your boyfriend would get mad? Doesn't sound like you should be judging your daughter so harshly. Sounds like you should be judging yourself. You're the a-hole. She made one mistake when she was a kid, and now she can't come to you or your boyfriend for help at all. She's asking so she could see a doctor. It's only $150. You need to get a job so you can have your own money. If something happens to your relationship, you'd be out of luck, and guess who won't be there to help you?